AQA English Language Paper 2 Question 3 assesses the language element of Assessment Objective 2. Explain, comment on and analyse how writers use language and structure to achieve effects and influence readers using relevant subject terminology to support their view. Now in this exam, what we mean by language analysis is pointed out in the mark scheme, a writer's use of words and phrases, language features and techniques, and sentence forms. You'll note that this is the same thing we looked at in Paper 1 Question 2, but in that question they were listed in bullet points. In this question, language means the same thing, it's just that there aren't any bullet points, so you need to remember the areas that you could write about. In this question, you're directed to a part of one of the sources and asked to analyse how the writer uses language. Before we look at a sample question, let me point out that there's been a lot of variety in this question over the exams we've had so far. Firstly, the lines in question have ranged from as short a section of text as just 7 lines to as many as 16 lines. And the source in question 3 has sometimes focused on the 19th century text, the November 2022 exam did that, and sometimes focused on the more modern text, both 2023 exams did that, so you need to be happy with analysing language in both. Even the focus of the question can vary. For example, how is language used to describe a person or an experience or the setting? Now let's look at a typical question, and this is taken from my 2nd edition guide to English language, which you can pick up through following the links in the description. You now need to refer only to source A from lines 18 to 30. How does the writer use language to describe working conditions at the factory? So this is a 12-mark question. You should spend around 15 minutes on it, and that gives you plenty of time to go back to the extract and reread the lines that the question is based on. Now the assessment objective for question 2 refers to the use of relevant subject terminology, and this has led some students to approach the question as if it's all about feature spotting, looking out for similes, metaphors, personification, that kind of thing. The key to this question is to be specific about the effects the writer's language choices have, or explain a reason behind the writer's choices. Your comments have to be specific to the text, they need to be precise and contextualised to the extract. One way to do this is to read the lines in question and ask yourself, what is the specific effect that the writer is trying to achieve? It could be to reveal a key characteristic of a person, such as dominance or confidence, excitability or enthusiasm, or it could be to present a feeling about an experience, such as intimidation or vulnerability. It really could be anything, so you need to reread the lines carefully and not just look for language to write about, but to think about the effect. And just to say, the summer 2023 exam report pointed out, and this is a paraphrase, that this question isn't about the emotive effect on the reader, for example that it makes the reader feel intimidated, it's about analysing the deeper meanings and connotations of specific word choices, questioning the author's rationale for selecting one term over another. For instance, in Ada Neil Chew's letter, why might she have chosen "we eat, we sleep, we work, endlessly, ceaselessly work," and not "we work all the time"? Why use an aphora? It's understanding and interpretation of these subtle distinctions that are recognised and valued in the mark scheme, and I'll show you an analysis of that specific quotation at the end of this video. So let's look at that part of the text. To take what may be considered a good week's wage, the work has to be so close and unremitting that we cannot be said to live, we merely exist. We eat, we sleep, we work, endlessly, ceaselessly work, from Monday morning till Saturday night without remission. Cultivation of the mind, how is it possible? Reading, those of us who are determined to live like human beings and require food for mind as well as body are obliged to take time which is necessary for sleep to gratify this desire. As for recreation and enjoying the beauties of nature, the seasons come and go and we have barely time to notice whether it is spring or summer. A living wage. Ours is a lingering, dying wage. Who reaps the benefit of our toil? I read sometimes of a different state of things in other factories, and if in others, why not those in Crewe? I have just read the report of the Royal Commissioner on Labour. Very good, but while Royal Commissions are inquiring and reporting and making suggestions, some of the workers are being hurried to their graves. In our example, the writer clearly wants to present the working conditions as hopeless and full of despair, and with that in mind, then we can pick out words and phrases, language features, techniques and sentence forms which create that effect. So what do we find that we could write about? Perhaps you want to pause the video now and take a look yourself. Well, there's anaphora with the repetition of we. There's the listing, eat, sleep, work, endlessly, ceaselessly. There are rhetorical questions and short sentences. Cultivation of the mind, how is it possible? Reading. There's the use of capital letters to emphasize the word how. There's hyperbole with how they've barely time to notice whether it's spring or summer. There's the pun on living wage with the phrase dying wage. But remember, this question is not about spotting language devices, it's all about effect. So you need to make sure the language you're writing about can be clearly analysed in terms of the effect. Let me give you an example. In the extract, we see the quotation, a good week's wage. Now, you might think, oh, that's alliteration, I'll write about that. And yes, it is alliteration, but the question is, does the writer use that alliteration to describe the working conditions? Does that alliteration show how the working conditions are hopeless and full of despair? And the answer is almost certainly no. So, there we found a language feature, but it's not relevant to the question, so I'm not going to write about it. And this was a point that was raised in the summer 2023 exam report, that some students spotted an obvious language feature, but were unable to link it to what the question was asking. And pretty much the same point came up in the November 2023 exam report. So just remember, you should only write about language features where you can analyse the effect. Now, as a 12-mark question, you're going to spend around 15 minutes on question 3, so you aren't going to be able to write about everything you find. In fact, the November 2022 exam report gave a really interesting tip, and this is a paraphrase, that this question is all about analysis, and you should aim to analyse in as much detail as possible how and why particular words are used by the writer. And that phrase, in as much detail as possible, is so important. Now, everyone writes at different speeds, so I'm not going to say, you need to make this many points or write this many paragraphs, but in that 15 minutes, you must make sure that you analyse in detail before moving on to the next quotation. We'll finish with one sample paragraph, but you can see a full answer written in timed conditions in my English language guide. The writer employs anaphora to describe the exploitative working conditions at the factory by explaining we eat, we sleep, we work, endlessly, ceaselessly work. By repeating the word we, the writer unifies the workers, signalling collective suffering and exploitation. This repetition underlines the shared burden and the systemic nature of their suffering, suggesting the working conditions are a communal rather than individual challenge. So what I've done in this paragraph is I've linked the methods to the question about working conditions, analysing their effect. Now, if you found this video useful, please do hit the subscribe button and give the video a like.